So apparently, there were 3 U.S. soldiers that were killed in Jordan. Now, this was due to an attack on a military base in Jordan. The Biden administration here is blaming Iran for the attack. Iran themselves are saying that they had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. But what this speaks to is the fact that once again, obviously, the Biden administration is saying that they have to respond. We could see ourselves in another conflict in the Middle East. Can you guys even believe the amount of foreign conflicts that have happened under Joe Biden's presidency? I kid you not. Let's get into it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about who those soldiers are as well.
We'll join Fareed Zakaria GPS in a moment, but right now we've got this breaking news. 3 U.S. troops were killed and at least 24 more injured in a drone attack on a small U.S. outpost in Jordan, near the border with Syria and Iraq. This is the first time U.S. troops have been killed by enemy fire in the Middle East since the beginning of the war in Gaza, October
7th. Okay. Look at this. 3 U.S. troops killed, at least 24 injured. I want you to pay attention to the map. Notice it's in Jordan, but it's right on the border here of Syria. Again, we talked about this, the U.S. government occupying a third of Syria, and that just happens to be the part where the oil is located. And I'll go ahead and start out saying this. First of all, those bases shouldn't be there in the first place. We should not have U.S. bases in the Middle East. Let's go on a little bit more.
7th. It also marks a significant escalation of an already precarious situation in the Middle East. President Biden reacting a short time ago, vowing the U.S. will hold those responsible to account. We've got full coverage of this breaking story. Natasha Bertrand is in Washington. Priscilla Alvarez is with President Biden in South Carolina. And Ben Wiedemann is in Beirut. So, Natasha, you first. What are we learning about the attack?
It's a very serious moment for the U.S. military, for President Biden, for the administration writ large, because this is the first time that U.S. service members have actually been killed from hostile fire since the war in Gaza began and sparked all of these tensions throughout the Middle East. Now, we're learning that these 3 U.S. service members, they were killed after a drone struck a base in northeast Jordan, right on the border of Syria. And it also wounded, we are told now, upwards of 30 other U.S. service members. That number is likely to continue to rise as these service members seek treatment for symptoms that are consistent with traumatic brain injury, according to 2 U.S. officials that we spoke to in the last hour. Now, this is a real.
Now, why do you feel those soldiers, why do you feel U.S. bases are being targeted now in the Middle East? They said the first time we've had these casualties since the war in Gaza. Obviously, these other countries, they know. They are well aware that the U.S. government is funding Israel, that they are giving the weapons to Israel to commit the genocide in Gaza. I called this long ago and I said, we need to stop this at once. Stop giving them weapons, remove our hands and our ties that we have with Netanyahu's administration. And yet here we are. This is a clear sign from the Middle East that we should not be there. And I feel sorry for the troops. I feel sorry for their families, because the reality is, and I'll show you a picture of the troops in a second. The reality is, when they signed up to join the military, a lot of times these militaries, like, they recruit in low income Black and brown communities. And a lot of times they recruit at the high schools, and these kids sign up because they're told they're going to have a better life. There's going to be all these benefits that are given to them, right? The military will pay for their schooling. They won't have to worry about any type of debt. You can buy a house and put 0 down with the VA loan. Some of the perks that you get being a part of the military. And I know, because my dad was a part of the military. He went through this as well. I'm pretty sure that these parents, when they said goodbye to their kids, when their kids signed up to join the military, I'm pretty sure these parents never thought that their kids would die in the military. But this is a reality. This is part of the reason why military recruitment in this country has decreased.
really high number of individuals killed and wounded in this kind of attack. Previously, when these kinds of attacks by these Iran-backed militias have occurred, targeting U.S. and coalition bases in Iraq and Syria, there have been a number of injuries, but most of them have been minor. The most extensive of those injuries being traumatic brain injuries, for example. But never before, since these attacks started in October, have we seen U.S. service members actually be killed in one of these drone and rocket attacks that have been launched by these militant groups that are supported by Iran in Iraq and Syria. So the U.S., of course, taking this extremely seriously. We got a statement from Central Command. We also have a statement from President Biden acknowledging this, and from the Vice President Kamala Harris. Remains to be seen how the U.S. is going to respond. But we are told that as of right now, of those U.S. service members who were wounded, at least 3 of them were evacuated for medical treatment. So their injuries serious enough to have to actually be removed and medevaced out.
And
so, as you can see, they are blaming this on Iran. And I've told you for a while, I felt like the U.S. government has been itching to go to war with Iran. I think this is a really dangerous idea. They have powerful weapons. We do not want to go to war with them. We don't want to go to war with anyone, to be honest with you. But I said before that this situation in the Middle East was going to continue to escalate, and we are a part of it. We cannot wash our hands and say that we are not involved because we're not the ones actively over there fighting in Gaza. We're supplying the weapons. We're giving funding to Israel. We give funding to Israel every year. So everyone should be concerned by this.
Natasha, what are the options on how the U.S. might respond?
Well, previously, in the kind of over 150 attacks on U.S. and coalition bases in Iraq and Syria that we have seen since October by these Iran-backed militant groups, the U.S. has responded a number of times by striking these militant groups in Iraq and Syria kind of on an individual basis, targeting their infrastructure, targeting certain militant groups, killing several of those militants in the strikes that the U.S. military has carried out. But it's unclear at this point whether the U.S. is going to feel like it has to go further this time, simply because 3 U.S. service members were killed, again, in a first that we have seen since this war began.
All right.
But I want you to pay attention to something that she did. Notice she kept saying Iran-backed militant groups. That is to make you angry at Iran and to take the focus off of the fact that U.S. military bases should not be there in the Middle East. I don't really understand this, because I look at it this way. If they were able to pull troops out of Afghanistan after they devastated that country, after the U.S. government basically demolished that country and put sanctions on that country, and there are kids starving in Afghanistan because of those sanctions, I don't understand why they would think that it's okay for U.S. bases to remain in the Middle East. Again, they are there specifically at that point that you saw on that map because they are trying to occupy the area of Syria that has the oil. And this is another case for this. And whether you consider yourself to be passionate about climate, or whether you're a climate activist or not, this is another reason why we need to get away from fossil fuels. We need to get away from oil. How many of these wars have been about oil and other resources? We need to move away from these things. But right now, and hopefully more people will see this, it is really not a good idea for U.S. bases to be in the Middle East. It's actually not a good idea for U.S. bases to be in any of these other countries, period. I want you to imagine if you walked outside your back door and China had a base here. Iran had a base here. Germany had a base here. How would you feel if all these other countries had bases in the United States and they were occupying us? How would you feel? We'll go on a little bit more here.
Natasha, thank you. Priscilla Alvarez traveling with President Biden. How has he reacted to this?
Well, President Biden releasing a statement this morning in which he said the administration is still gathering the facts, but also suggesting that the U.S. will retaliate. Let me read part of that statement to you. It says, quote, "Today, America's heart is heavy. While we are still gathering the facts of this attack, we know it was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq." He goes on to later say the 3 American.
You see this? You see the talking points? So she told you that Joe Biden said they're backed by Iran, right? The militant groups are backed by Iran. And then you notice the reporter here says the same thing. And the reporter that came on before her says the same thing. So she's right now standing in Columbia, South Carolina. I know exactly where that church is at. I used to live in Columbia, South Carolina, where Joe Biden is heavily campaigning right now, trying to get Black church members. We're going to get to that story tonight. But I want to make this very clear to you. I told you they repeat the same talking points as the State Department.
Service members we lost were patriots in the highest sense, and their ultimate sacrifice will never be forgotten by our nation. Together, we will keep the sacred obligation we bear to their families. We will strive to be worthy of their honor and valor. And he concludes, we will carry on their commitment to fight terrorism and have no doubt we will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing. Now, we know, too, from the White House that President Biden had been briefed this morning by his national security team about the attacks. That includes by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. And of course, U.S. officials have been increasingly concerned about escalating tensions in the Middle East as there has been an increase in attacks in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Lebanon. Just this morning, we heard from President Biden's military advisor in a pre-recorded interview with ABC saying that there were concerns and they were trying to avoid broadening any conflict in the Middle East. And he said that his advice to the president up until this point was to protect U.S. forces and take away Hamas's capability. Now, again, President Biden suggesting that they will retaliate. What that looks like in the days to come is unclear, but this is certainly a concerning development for the White House. Fred.
So she mentioned take away Hamas's capability. That doesn't have anything to do with what happened in Jordan. See how they're trying to once again pass this on to Hamas. Now, what's interesting, because Joe Biden is figuring out a way to respond, because he said he will respond to these attacks. At the same time, they're telling you on mainstream media that Iran is behind this. What does the Pentagon say in reference to who is behind these attacks? Listen to this.
Idris.
Just to follow up, you said Iran was behind the attack. So what does that mean? Have you seen evidence of financing or directing anything specific to this attack? Not just generally, but specifically.
So maybe I need to clarify further from what Lita had mentioned. We know that Iran funds these groups, like Kataib Hezbollah. We know that these IRGC-backed militias are the ones responsible for attacks on our troops in Iraq and Syria. Beyond that, we're doing an intelligence assessments. We don't have. I can't give you today that.
This attack, linking it to Iran.
We just know that Iran funds these groups, like Kataib Hezbollah and other groups that have attacked our forces. But I don't have more to share on that.
You're saying, right?
As a general matter, yes.
So did you catch that? She said, we know that Iran funds these groups, but when the reporter was asking her, what evidence do you have to prove that Iran was behind that specific attack in Jordan? Well, we don't know, but we know that they fund these groups. Okay, let me use an example. We know that, let me put this up here. Hold on. We know that the U.S. government funds Israel, right? Don't we know this? They fund them every year. But can you say that the U.S. government was behind the attack on Gaza when they attacked them after October 7th? You see what I mean? Yes, the U.S. government has been sending them weapons, particularly after October 7th. This is why this is very vague, but that's the Pentagon basically admitting to you that they really do not have evidence that Iran is behind that specific attack. They just know that Iran funds those groups. Do they know which group actually did the attack? I'm not here to come here and cheerlead on Iran or anything like that. I'm here to ask the questions that mainstream media pundits and the Pentagon, like the woman you just saw up there, are not asking. And the questions that you should be asking. And what's really interesting, we got people out here saying, yeah, go get them. Go get Iran. Tucker Carlson seems to be taking this differently. This is crazy. This is crazy. Lindsey Graham is saying, hit Iran now. Hit them hard. You see this? This is the warmongering Senator John Cornyn. Target Tehran. And this is Tucker Carlson who retweeted it, and he said, fucking lunatics. This is what they want. They're crazy. They're crazy. We do not want to go to war with Iran. I want to be very, very clear. That is not something that we want. But you got to remember who funds these guys, right? Lindsey Graham, funded by the military industrial complex. I know. I lived in South Carolina. I don't know why people still continue to support that guy, but he's heavily funded by the military industrial complex. So that's them doing their donor bidding. Now, I told you that Joe Biden has decided to respond. Biden says he has decided U.S. response to Jordan attack. So this comes in. Mr. Biden did not elaborate in his remarks at the White House, but added, I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. And Iran-backed, you see, they're all using the same talking points. An Iran-backed militia group has claimed responsibility for the attack at a U.S. military base. Now they're saying that one of these groups did claim responsibility. But wait for it. Dozens more were injured in Sunday's strike near the Syrian border. Now, listen to this part. Iran has denied any involvement. See, once again, they just want us to listen to the West and believe the West. They don't want us to believe any of these other countries in the Middle East, with the exception of Israel. The U.S. government doesn't want you to believe anything that they say. And this is not to say that they're always telling the truth either. But it is to say the West isn't always telling the truth. And a lot of times the West are the ones that instigate this. It goes on to say White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said the U.S. might take a tiered approach in its response, not just a single action, but potentially multiple actions over a period of time. Think about that, guys. Multiple actions over a period of time. The guiding principle is making sure that we continue to degrade the kinds of capabilities that these groups have at their disposal to use against our troops and our facilities, in their country, where we should not be. Mr. Kirby added, the president will do what he has to do to protect our troops and our facilities, yada, yada. The president has a number of options, including retaliatory strikes on Iran-allied bases and commanders. So you see this? Let me highlight this. Strikes on Iran-allied bases and commanders. So they're honestly thinking about hitting Iran bases, getting us closer and closer towards World War III. The U.S. could also target senior commanders at Iran's Islamic Revolution Guard Corps in Iraq or Syria. Now they're talking about hitting Syria again. They're talking about attacking Iraq again. Because they just can't keep their finger off the button. Just can't keep their finger off. In recent months, several U.S. bases in the Middle East have been attacked by militias trained, funded, and equipped by Iran. Maybe we should not be there. Maybe we should not be there. The Islamic resistance in Iraq, which is made up of several Iran-affiliated militias operating, has claimed responsibility for Sunday's strike. So this is the group that they're saying has claimed responsibility. However, I just read to you earlier that Iran says they have nothing to do with this, but they're saying that group in particular has claimed responsibility. Now I want you to think about these three soldiers. These are the soldiers that were killed in Jordan. And I want to speak to parents, brothers, sisters, uncles, all of you out there, and I want to be very clear. 3 Black soldiers killed in Jordan. The U.S. government, again, they have sent Black youth to other countries, basically to die for a country that doesn't even consider them to be priority. Let me say this again, because Muhammad Ali was very clear as to why he would not go and fight in Vietnam. Why go fight for a country that doesn't even treat me as an equal? And I'm supposed to go die for this country? Well, that was many years ago, but this country still don't treat you as an equal. These military organizations, and I know from experience, where do they do the recruiting? They heavily recruit at low-income Black and brown high schools. They go to those communities. You don't see them trying to recruit rich white kids in the rich neighborhoods at the wealthy schools. Of course not. They go to the communities that they know need the benefits that they're offering. You see, if we had free public college in this country, if we had health care for everyone in this country, we wouldn't have this problem. And I still believe till this day, the reason why this country does not want to give everyone free public college, we're not talking about the private schools, but the public universities and make those free, is because that would be one of the benefits that would actually be removed from someone who's trying to be recruited to join the US military. Right? That's one of the benefits that they would lose. The reason why they don't want to give you universal health care is because, of course, a lot of the politicians are bought by big pharma, but that's not the only reason. They also don't want to give you that because that's also one of the large benefits. TRICARE is great insurance. I had it. That's one of the big benefits about joining the US military. And we have to remember that military recruitment is down. My plea to you, if you have kids, when these recruiters come into their schools, don't you let them take your baby across these wars. Don't you let them take your kids into their military and send them overseas to die for a country that doesn't even want to repair and restore the in reference to the atrocities that have happened to American freedmen in this country, for a country that doesn't even consider them to be an equal, damn less a priority. Don't let your babies join the military to die for a country that doesn't give a damn about them. A country that can give billions of dollars to Israel every year, but still refuses to pay reparations towards American freedmen. Don't you let them go fight for this country. So much more I could say tonight. So much more. But we got a time limit. 3 Black soldiers went and died for a country that doesn't give a damn about them. And here we are moving towards another conflict in the Middle East. All this has happened under Joe Biden's administration. Now, I see a lot of people out there trying to tell me you need to be afraid because we could get Donald Trump. How much more fear do you need to have, people? Aren't you afraid right now? Look at what is happening. We have the Ukraine war. We got the war in Gaza. The U.S. is bombing Yemen. And now we have this conflict in Jordan. So the U.S. is now going to target Iran. All under the Democrats that everybody told us we had to elect because he was running on the soul of this country. This country don't have a soul. Soul's been gone. This is where we're at now. And people can say it however they want to. But no one person is going to come and save you. And I've said this time and time again, that we have to save ourselves. All these people are sold out. 3 soldiers gone. How many wars under Joe Biden? It's really interesting because he actually made this criticism of Donald Trump when he was running in 2020. Or we're going to take it back tonight. Joe Biden tweeted this in 2020. Donald Trump brought us dangerously close to starting a new war with Iran without any semblance of a plan. I'll show you the date. This was January 10th, 2020. Check this out.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message. The U.S. confrontation with Iran entered a dangerous new phase.
Across Iran this morning calls for death to America and revenge.
We live in the most dangerous moment in a generation. Our world set on edge. This is a moment that requires strong, steady, stable leadership. We need someone tested and trusted around the world. Joe Biden, a president with the experience to lead on day one.
And look at where we are now. Conflict with Iran. But Joe Biden said Donald Trump was going to be the one. He was the one that was heading us in that direction. Look at where we are. Look where we are. They're not that much different, people. They're not that much different. It's interesting, though. This is one part that will make you laugh, I think. Joy Reid actually was caught on a hot mic. I guess she's had it with these damn wars, too. So listen to this. Joy Reid caught on a hot mic, starting another fucking war. Listen to this. She's talking about the border, but when they pan away from her, something comes out.
Over the weekend, President Biden said he's ready to take action if Congress is serious about solving the border issue.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. And Congress needs to get it done.
Starting another fucking war.
Whoops. There it is, folks. There it is. The hot mic came in.
Congress needs to get it done.
Starting another fucking war.
You know, so that was Joy Reid saying starting another fucking war. You know, when I studied broadcasting in undergrad, they used to always tell us, because we used to have to go into the studio, they would always tell us, just tell yourself that your mic is always hot, because you never know, right? You never know. And Joy actually did apologize, but not for what you would think. Listen to what she said. This is really interesting.
Before we go, I just want to apologize very quickly. I was chatting during a clip that was playing, and you know, we try to keep this show very PG-13. So I just want to apologize to anyone who was listening to my behind-the-scenes chatter. Deeply apologize for that, because you know it's PG-13 up around here. So thank you to you all for watching the Great Doubt.
So she was basically apologizing for the profanity. That's why she said it's PG-13 around here. But she didn't apologize for actually the war comment. She didn't retract it either. She didn't say, oh, you know what? You actually heard me say something there and the camera panned away and I didn't really mean to say that. No, she didn't take it back. That lets you know how Joy really feels. Joy isn't stupid. I often wonder what people like Joy and Jake Tapper say behind the scenes. They're not stupid. They know Joe Biden is a mess. They know we're involved in too many international, conflicts under the Biden administration, and it just happened to slip out. Aye. Let's go to some of the comments here. Mississippi says all the benefits that mostly Black folks do not get access to. Exactly. And that's why they recruit in those neighborhoods. Trauma Queen says Black troops should not be out there terrorizing brown people on their land. It's a shame. Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat, NY Varsity. As a vet, you know what pisses me off? When it comes to going to war, there is zero discussions on where the money is coming from. But at liking, care of our vets when we come back. Yeah. I know. My dad went through that as well, because the VA ain't shit. Pardon my language. I'm trying to get better. The VA is not. Oh my God. It's nothing. Rick says, what about Congo, Sabby? Colton is worse than oil. Actually, I have a guest coming on Thursday to talk about Congo. So we're going to get into that as well. Thank you for the super sticker, Dina Kelly. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Great work, Sabby. Thank you. Mona says, don't send your kids to die. Exactly. Don't let the military take your babies away. Not happening.